kind of the prospecting that I'd be interested in doing for our clients.
Right.
You know, buyers specifically, I think.
All right, so the act of prospecting, let's put this on the table. By the way, for those of you online, sorry for the little delay there. It is Friday, June 1st of 2018. Did I say May? June 1st. So we're talking about prospecting today and the act of doing so. And I think that leads a lot of people to say, well, wait a minute, what do you really mean by prospecting? What is a prospect? So I think a lot of people get confused that they think it's cold calling versus the direct marketing world. And we just don't believe that that's the right argument. We believe that direct response marketing can be very good at getting somebody some contact information to call and prospect into. So in other words, with Tony Legendry in the hot seat yesterday, it was more so, Tony, how are you doing prospecting into the leads with their contact information that you're getting from the internet versus picking up the phone as really what is, you know, sort of the more a traditional idea of prospecting, which is picking up the phone and calling around a just listed, around a just sold, meaning calling into the neighborhood. And then that begs the question, well, what do I say and how do I say it? And that's a good segue into what, you know, we want to talk about here today is how do I do that? But again, the big distinction with you and I that we made was that prospecting also includes what Tony and I and you understand at a deeper level, that you really have to be prospecting into your database of prospects, right? Yeah. Not waiting for those people to passively somehow find what they want via MLS, but actually taking the act of prospecting skills and saying, Wendy, where do you want to be? I'm going to call every single waterfront property until we find somebody who's willing to sell. Right? And make a market aggressively and individually, even a little bit outside the multiple listing service. That can also be an act of prospecting. So I think it's important to just give that definition before we get started. All right, I'm going to open up the microphones. And remember, please remember that we are live here. I don't like to mute people's mics, but I will have to if it's loud. But you can do that for me by *6ing your microphone. I sound like a radio announcer. You can do that for me by *6ing your mic, okay? All right, here we go. Good. All right, so if any of you were there yesterday in the mastermind, I want to go to my mastermind members first, pick up where we left off, and then everybody will benefit from the act of doing so. Anybody want to run with me on this one here? Any thoughts? I need one of my mastermind members to run with me on the thought of prospecting. And I will help with dialogue. I don't know if we have Adam Kuchik and his team, but certainly if you guys are there, I want to hear from you.
Hey, Danny, we should be on the line.
Yeah, buddy.
I'm here. I don't know if my agents are on yet, but they've all got the link.
Okay, pal. Well, listen, why don't you jump in the hot seat with me? Let's go after it, and, you know, you could be there with us. I think the things that we have determined as we look at all of these scriptings and whatnot is that the classic and traditional way that we look at, hey, Adam, just turn me down a little bit on your speakerphone. Just to turn...
Okay.
Yeah. Just just turn me. Yeah, only because it's coming back at me, and I can't stand the sound of my echoey voice. So the scripting, and I have it up in front of me. I still think that when you're prospecting, there is a certain level of scripting or formulaic approach, right? So I still think we have to remember why we're there. And so I want to put that on the table, and I'll leave you and Laura in the hot seat because Laura's really, you know, kind of defining this with me. But if I were to look at the definition of calling around a neighborhood regarding just solds, just listed, or general information, what is... Hey, guys.
I'm actually trying to follow your... Is there something live to be watching?
No,
right now?
nope, just listen. You could be on Facebook, anybody that wants to see it on Facebook, but there's nothing to show there. So there's no, yep, nothing there, just audio today only. So if people want to tune in via Facebook, they could do that too, but there's nothing to show. So let me just say, suffice to say, I want to why don't I just put Laura in the hot seat? You can listen, okay? Let's just do it the easy way. So the thought here, Laura, is that we have this approach to expireds. We have this approach to probates, where you've already gone and, you know, you've worked with David and you've done some of it yourself. Your frustration with prospecting expireds is what? Let's start with frustrations, and that will lead us to just general circle prospecting challenges. What's the biggest frustration that you would have when it comes to expired? Start there.
I think the biggest one would be reaching them, you know, and I think that largely has to do with the hours I now work
Yeah.
are not aligned with a cold caller or whatever you want to call me. Like, they're just not during the time that people are home or
Yeah.
able to talk,
Yeah.
you know, and have a decent conversation. So for me, I just haven't had a ton of luck, you know, reaching and connecting with people.
Okay.
So it feels very like, okay, I'm spinning my wheels and I'm going and I'm trying and I'm getting nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you think it's because of timing. You're not so worried though so much about scripting or anything like that. Is there another frustration? What about when you get somebody on the phone and you're prospecting and expired? What's the biggest challenge that you feel like you have there?
I think my biggest challenge is me staying in a relaxed state.
Okay.
Because I have the knowledge. I know, I mean, I don't necessarily have like a script in front of me, but
Yeah.
I know the beats that I need to hit
Yeah.
and what my goal is in that moment. I think it's just, you just get anxious in some ways.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, oh shit, like I just
Yeah.
finally reached someone and
Yeah, right. Yeah.
like where am I?
Now, where do I go?
Yeah.
So is that a script problem? Is that an issue with structure? Or, I mean, I always think it's the orientation to the concept of prospecting. And I'm going to eliminate the fear that prospecting is cold calling. Everything's a cold call. You can couch it any way you want. You can call a warm lead, a hot lead. You can call it all that. It's nonsense, because the bottom line is, most of the time, and I want to separate this out into the beginning of a sales funnel, you're calling somebody who doesn't have context with you. So it's cold. The relationship is cold, right? Just because they saw your picture and they asked for information and they knew it was you. Sure, is that warmer per se
Slightly,
than a
really.
less branded lead? Right, slightly. But the truth be told is they still took the act of just getting information, not expecting to engage in relationship.
So because of that fact, you have to be very effective in the first 20 seconds you're on that. Your introduction has to be flawless.
Yeah.
And that is a strong suit for me.
Okay.
Like, I have that part of it down because I've been doing it for so long. I think it's more when getting in the nitty gritty and maybe feeling like asked a question that I don't have the perfect response.
Yeah, Timmy's saying online here, he's saying that pressure comes from not wanting to mess up the rare, connection that you make, right? Is that a fair summary? Or
Yes.
is it a little bit more than that?
Well, I think it's largely with mindset, and I'm really have shifted my mindset a lot when it comes to expired phone calls in particular, because our conversations have been detach yourself from the outcome.
Yeah.
You're not calling to get me in the door.
Yeah.
You're calling to establish a relationship, offer free information that may benefit whatever their, challenge is. Be in more of a concierge mindset instead of a necessary sales contacts, which
Right.
I think in general, just hearing that gets people anxious because it's like, oh, I gotta get this appointment, I'm failed, the call failed if I didn't, where that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, right. So, but yet the irony is, ultimately, we really do need to get that prospect created, and if the appointment is there, we need to get it.
Yes.
So I certainly don't want people to think that what we're saying is, oh, don't worry about it. Oh, yes, worry about that, because ultimately you do want to see the outcome. But the craziest thing is you have to detach from the thing that you really want the most, because that's what Tim just said. If you're sitting there and you're making all these calls, now certainly if you're using technology like a dialer or something to that extent, as Tony Legendi was saying yesterday, the concept of being able to do more in less time is the concept of time management, maximizing, or really that's called leveraging time. So with the right tools and technology, I can leverage time with better quality contact information of better quality people who might have some motivation. That's why I think forever this concept of expireds, probates, for sale by owners, cancel withdrawals, if you're going to cast a net over something where there is some context where you have a higher probability of having a real estate conversation, certainly that's it, because context exists in all of those, presuming on the probate that there is a piece of property to sell. right? So we have all of that. But again, people are withdrawing more and more and more behind texting, emails, etc. Hang on, guys. Sorry, I think that might have been Gail. We got a hot mic in Redwood. So the point is, if you are really, really hyper-focused on that outcome, and they call up, Tim's right. Now all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I got him. What do I say? And we lose ourselves.
Yes.
So you and I were just talking about that because Laura and I were working on the business for a couple hours today, like really just sitting down and saying, okay, we can breathe. Let's take a look at where we're at. Because yesterday, when we had to deal with something difficult, we were both in a heightened emotional state. So that very thing that we wanted to resolve or result we wanted to get, we couldn't. Now, the good news is we're so practiced at recognizing when we fall into that trap, we're able to, that skill set, and that's very important for this call today, that skill set in sales to be able to get yourself under control, especially when you're under attack, per se, or your perception is you are under attack. And I'll give another anecdote. Remind me to talk about North Glen and John and the referral source. So what I would say to you, though, is now coming into that, your best piece of advice, if you're really good now at controlling yourself emotionally at the opening call, what is the best piece of advice to everybody here? What is it that you're actually doing? What skill set would you say? Because you're going to have to take this to prospecting, which you found exasperating to expireds simply because you weren't reaching them?
Partly, yeah.
Okay, partly. What's the other partly?
Well, I think it's probably still some leftover head stuff. Like my crap.
Yeah.
Not.
Or is it a job shift change? Because a lot of team leaders a lot of team leaders that do prospecting themselves or follow-up phone calls themselves.
My heart isn't into that type
There you
of
go.
job.
Everybody hear that? I think that's an important point that I was trying to root out of her. It's very difficult. Now, as team leaders or owners or broker owners, you don't have a choice. You absolutely 100% need to. Would you grab me just a quick glass of water? I just think I swallowed a fly. So you absolutely need to get this job done. Period, paragraph. You have to get it done. And the point is, if your heart's not in it, you can't run out and hire somebody fast enough to do this calling, which we will call in the beginning prospecting, but also once they've been created into a real estate relationship, you're still prospecting into your entire database to create. Okay? So, all right. So let's get this opened up and get some of you around this conversation with us.
Hey, Danny?
Yeah, go. Come on.
Sorry, it's Aida.
Yeah, go ahead, Aida. Awesome.
Hey, I have a question for Laura. I wanted to know if she felt if there was a difference in the time that she was calling, whether it was morning or evening.
Yeah, we just had this call.
Evenings. I mean, when I was heavy into, prospecting, calling, in the more beginning of my career and middle, it was evenings all the way. Like, that's when I reached the most amount of people. Like, my day was very structured, more, any sort of administrative stuff would be more daytime hours, and then between 5 and 8 were my, time where I banged out my phone calls.
Yeah. And I have an interesting question, Aida, on the back of that. Does reaching people at certain times change when their disposition with us changes? Meaning, when a contact is a lead and we have no relationship, versus when we have, I'll break prospects into 2 chunks, even though we have 5. Long term, longer than 6 months. Short term, inside of 6 months. Mm-hmm. And then ultimately, clients. Do you find that the times that you call them cheat back more towards 9 to 5, the deeper the relationship?
Yes, because I think that you're more apt to get a response because you have that relationship established in some capacity. I mean, my clients, it's most of the time it's during the day that I'm communicating, and then sometimes all the way up till like 7 and 8 at night.
Yeah.
But that's mostly through text.
Yeah.
So I think during the day and working hours, it's easier to communicate with prospects if you have that type of relationship with them.
Yeah.
And our clients, versus email and text, because that's what they're capable of doing during a working hours.
Yeah. So your best advice to Aida and Heather in that case, since they work together, would be that you believe that get the 9 to 5 stuff done with the clients, right? Then cheat towards the prospects if you have the deeper relationship. And then ultimately to create new prospects, you got to do something at night. Right? Yeah. Mihalowicz, who's had some great success with prospecting, who just talked to, let's reference his hours. Aida, Paul Mihalowicz, who's one of the mastermind members, his business is heavily weighted towards prospecting, and we're working on that long-term follow-up and content marketing to support it, but he already has great success in this. So what does that look like?
So he says 8 to 5, he has some people on that schedule, and then some from 5:30 to 8. And then someone on 9 to 1 on Saturday.
Okay, so I think the two key points there, because always when I've ever been trained by, my mentor was a prospector and or trained, I see that early evening up until about 8 o'clock is effective, and definitely Saturday mornings. I've heard that for years. I think the interesting thing about Saturday mornings too, people are in relatively good moods too.
Yeah.
They tend to be in a pretty decent mood on Saturday. That's why I personally love to prospect at an open house, because I think people coming to a 10:30 to noon open house are in a good mood. That's what I find. Anytime that I've done them on Sunday, I've also had decent luck and I've had the showings, but I found that to be much more hit or miss with attitude. Right? They could be, and especially Aida, that's because of where we are on the Cape, you know, where you may or may not be there for the weekend, you might not be leaving, right? Hey guys, live mics here. Hello. Sorry. Okay, so Aida, does that help you? I mean, does that give you some context for, you know, that early evening hour and then that Saturday morning?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are.
Yeah, so that's actually what I'm doing now. Personally, I haven't had much of a difference with either or, but I was curious to see, you know, in different locations and how other people, what their success has been like. What I'm doing now, and I know it might be a little bit different because I work part-time for Heather, is I vary my shifts. So I'll do, let's say, like 2 shifts in the earlier morning, going in towards noon, and then I do 2 afternoon shifts, and then I do a Saturday morning, or not so much morning, but like, you know, like mid-morning, and I haven't noticed too much, people are answering more in the evening. It definitely has varied for me, and I think that sometimes I catch people around lunchtime too, which if they're taking a break and whatnot, or depending on what they're working as, I notice I get people around that time too.
Yeah.
If I even get anybody.
Yeah. Okay. So there's the frustrating part. I think that over time, when you're prospecting or calling your own database, is the infrequency with which people answer the phone versus what they did 4 or 5 years ago. I think that can be the maddening part of it, Aida. You know, that's the part that you really have to be consistent. So Laura, as far as that's concerned, what's your best advice as far as the patience? I mean, how do you know it's paying? What milestones does she have to be, you know, searching for when it comes to this?
I mean, yeah, I definitely feel for you, and I noticed in the flow of days and weeks that just some days you'd get really lucky and reach a ton of people, and then other days it's like you're hearing the crickets and you're talking to yourself. So in those moments, it's definitely exasperating. I can feel for you on that. I think it's just a matter of keeping steady with it. I like how you have some morning hours and evening. I think that having a mixture of that is definitely key. I like that you're reaching some people during lunchtime, because I too have had success during that hour. So I think you're doing all the right things. And when you do reach people, you know, moving them up the ladder or out, kicking them out is a milestone. So it's not like you're running a sprint. You're running a marathon, and it's going to be a slow and steady type of progress.
Yeah. And Aida, here's the thing that in this group and in this system that I learned and that we've worked really hard on the last 5 years to really pay attention to, there's too much cream skimming. There's too much of it. And it has to stop because people are going broke with their expenses to generate leads, which are atrophying left and right. I just train enough people, and we do it ourselves every day, to tell you that this, I knew it would happen too. I can remember when Craigslist just kind of blew up and said, you're all gone, right? Get off of here. You're all obnoxious, because everybody believed that, this whole lead gen thing was going to be the way that the consumer got in that lane, stayed in that lane, and they haven't. And they've left it in droves. Why? Because it's what marketers, I think Seth Godin said it best, marketers ruin everything. If we're telemarketing too aggressively and we're after them too aggressively, eventually we're allowed to be more voyeuristic in this world than ever before. We're allowed to stalk you. That's why even when we're coaching social media, we're saying, look, the bare minimum for social media is to have enough good quality content so when somebody's stalking you, they say, yep, they've got their stuff together. That's the bare minimum, right? Because it is ultimately, we're always working so far away from the conversation. We think that's the solution. Ironically, it's not. So it also merits the discussion with Heather and yourself, and that's why prospecting is on the table. The concept of picking up the phone and calling around information, I'm going to leave it at that for a second, because I want this to be an all-inclusive discussion. And I'm going to show you how easy it is to add prospecting to the mix of what you do, right? Meaning you're just going to call into neighborhoods looking for more conversations too, not just a lead pile. So we have enough people that are beginning to do both, and we do both, and we're going to be aggressive about the one that we're weaker at, which is generally circle prospecting around information. Meaning what? Well, we send a market update postcard, now monthly, to 5 areas. 3 of them are villages on the Cape that are contiguous, and 2 of them are contiguous neighborhoods in Boston. So we send that. So Aida, the thought could be, and sorry I'm leaving you in the hot seat, but I think this all matters for your edification of how we're all exasperated by the digital age, but how we can solve it by trying to cut to conversations fastest. That's the number one deal here in this business these days, is how many more conversations can we have every day, every week, that are quality, right? I'm sure that's music to your ears, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because it's exasperating. I know what you do. When you call in and nobody answers, how frustrated are you? Express it. How do you feel?
Yeah, it gets pretty frustrating. I mean, especially like on the days where you even get one person and then you're like, oh, I'm on a roll today just because I even got one person on the phone, and then it's just crickets afterwards.
Yeah, well, think about that. One is a home run. Because that one could very well be, go ahead, come on.
It's crazy to me, because when I was doing this years ago, and it was very much a call-oriented job, I would never have days where I would just reach one person.
And there's the point.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I want everybody to hear that, because that's historical perspective and reality in the field as to what...
minimum of 5.
You hear that, Aida? So... And again,
Laura, do you think it has to do? I was thinking about this the other day, and I mean, I don't know, how many years you're going back in terms of saying that, but do you feel like because it is such a digital world now that it's so easy to just, because I'm guilty of doing it all the time, where I see a number that I don't know and I press a silent, and if it's important, I say if it's important, they'll leave me a voicemail, or they could just text me. And I feel like a lot of people nowadays, it's like, well, they can just text me, because there's so much telemarketers, like we were saying. But do you feel like it's just the difference of it being a digital world now in terms of when you first started?
100%. You hit it right on the nail. I do the same exact thing. I block numbers now that call me repeatedly and I don't know it. I never pick up the phone if I don't know your number, ever. And that's just, I think if you and I mean, the mentality, I think, of society in general is more of a under the radar type of communication.
Yeah.
Not human contact until they're ready.
Okay, so now watch this, because Tim's communicating with me on the Facebook group here with a couple of things that he's right. He's actually moving this into a question about, so what do you give your team? What do you actually say? What do we have available to discuss? And that's where content matters. And to Adam and his team, it's the same thing. That as you pick up the phone and you go to call somebody, when Mihalowicz and I were talking about it was about a real estate conversation. Did you have a substantial real estate conversation? Okay. Let's forget about whether they became a prospect of yours or not yet. Did you pick up the phone and have a substantial real estate conversation? So that goes back to the introduction, where everybody like panics. Oh my God, what did they say? Are you thinking about making a move? And no, we lose ourselves in that moment. And I say, look, you have to remember to introduce yourself. Like, think about it at any kind of venue. We always go to the bar for some reason, even though most of us are, I don't know, at least me, I'm getting too old to go to a bar and be entertained. But if you walk into any venue, hi, I'm Danny Griffin. Nice to meet you. What's your name? We've just like, why do we lose that moment which could settle us down and just, this is who I am. Not even this is where I'm from. This is who I am. Hey, I'm Danny Griffin. And I'm not even saying that that's smooth enough to not get hung up on in the digital age, because it's not. If you say, hey, it's Danny Griffin calling. Yeah?
Yeah, Danny Griffin.
Click.
Too.
Right. So I'm not going there, but I'm saying more so from the mindset to be able to take that beat, just remember to introduce yourself. Then the next beat, and we're slowing it down artificially for training, is from Griffin Realty Group, and here's why I'm calling you, right? So, and the because, that next because is really everything. It's everything, right? In that moment in time. So to Tim's point, because what? What information do you possibly have that you're willing to interrupt what I'm doing and be relevant? That's a very important point. That because is that trigger word. And it will trigger a pause in them. This is me. I'm calling from here because. And it has to be as, oh, this is weird to say it, but generically exciting as anything. So Tim says this. Let's work down the ladder, Tim, of content. Number one is every single month I implore you all to have some market data information in the neighborhood or the region, and don't make it too big if you can help it. The more hyper-local your general information is, the more relevant you will be in that phone call. You will just be more relevant. Hey, it's Danny Griffin calling for Griffin Realty Group. I don't know if you received it, but I just want to let you know we have you on the list for the Beacon Hill market update. Just want to give you a heads up, it's coming. Right? That's about as generally specific as I can get, and the information about the market, real estate market update is what it is. So if I'm making just a call, an awareness call, that would be what I would call a brand call. Ask for nothing, and your intent is to simply brand yourself in that context by positioning yourself, right? Classic marketing. I want to position myself as the financial market update guy in real estate. So therefore, I have sent you this in the mail. Be on the lookout for it. Great, thanks. Hey, by the way, inventory is really tight, as you'll see from the report. You don't happen to know anybody in you know, on the hill around you that's thinking about selling, do you? I really like that from yesterday's call, that we weren't asking them. We were asking them if they knew of anybody else. And then ultimately the final beat, you didn't happen to be thinking about selling, did you? So we just finally get to what we really, really want and need at the very end by being proper. Weird way to say it, but we are. We're
making it about them and not you.
Right, and you're properly relevant where you can still be, because anywhere along the line, if you get cut off, you were still proper in being a gentlewoman, a gentleman about information, right? I'm exaggerating the point again. Here's who I am, here's where I'm from, because I got this thing for you.
Here's my gift.
Here's my gift.
Free information.
Here's my information. Now, a little tidbit of insight. What you'll notice in the latest report is average price per square foot has gone down for the first time in a long time. So now I went intro. I went because to trigger this valuable information and to just get a little smidgen of my expertise, I drop a little bit of insight into what's coming. Now, if there was ever a way to properly set yourself up to ask them back for help, I think those are the beats. I mean, if anybody wants to weigh in on that and say they think something's missing.
Do you think that would be an effective voicemail?
Yes.
I mean, really, if you're thinking about it.
Well, let me say, I said yes quickly. Let me ask you this. The context would be why? Why is Aida doing any of these calls? Why are you doing any of these calls? Why? Ultimately, we're running a business. And ultimately, it's to create a prospect who is willing to engage in a serious real estate conversation, whether it be super short and there's an appointment, or longer and there's a valuable opportunity down the line. That is the number one purpose we have to do it. Now, there are other byproducts that I would accept as a business person that would be positive for the brand. No, Laura, I'm a lifer here. I'll die on Beacon Hill, and I love my little joint. Fabulous. We'll keep sending this to you so that in case any of your neighbors, friends, family are thinking about moving in or out of Beacon Hill, they have this information and you have it. It's so cheap for us to send it to you. We're happy to send it. Thanks for being there. And if there's anything you ever need, you need contractors, you need somebody, we want to be the resource for the neighborhood. I think there's huge value in that. Yeah. Because if you have a long-term horizon, and we've got to get off this short-term horizon where everybody's such a transactional agent, nobody's willing to put in the work to become the resource. I see it on social. I see a lot of people on social. Dean Miller and I talk about this a lot. I see people wanting to go out and, being taught to go interview this person, go interview that person, go talk about restaurants. Sure, but if that's your primary focus, you better know why. Right? You better know why, because that should be there to prospect off of social so that ultimately people will see you and they'll say, what a nice person to go out there and tell me about this restaurant, and they're the local realtor. So you always have to remember to position yourself as a realtor, a real estate agent. That's you. This is what you do. I'm happy to bring you all this information, but the next time you or somebody you know is thinking about buying or selling, give us a chance.
Yeah.
Right? What's that?
I think it's lame. I don't know that people really are that interested. It seems almost obsequious.
In what? In which piece of it?
Well, just to tell them about some new restaurant or something.
Right. I agree with what you. I agree with you. No. Hold on. You misunderstood a little bit, but I also agree with what you said. I personally feel that it could be very lame if that's your primary focus to go on social media and interview people. I couldn't agree with you more, Clara. 100%. I'm just cautioning people that if you're doing that, it better be because you have been proven, or it has been proven to you, that is prospecting for you. And I don't think it is. I think it's really a step way backwards. If it's there because after you've done your calling around information, just listed, just sold, expireds, and you've exhausted all that, it's already done, and you want to put a good piece of content up on social so that when somebody vets you, Clara, and you want to go down and do a quick little interview, hey, I'm down here with Sally, who owns, Sally's Margaritas, and the best margarita on Beacon Hill, check this out. By the way, if you're thinking about buying or selling, I'm Danny. Yeah, so I agree with you, Clara. I think it goes way backwards if it's a primary function. That's why I'm sticking to prospecting, because it's the shortest way. Pick up the phone, call people in the area. And the ones with the context should be first. Expireds, FSBOs, cancels, withdrawns, possibly probates. If they have a property to sell, you'll find that out. Because if you're going to grind where there's the highest probability where you can create a real estate conversation. Does that make sense to you? Now that I clarified? Yeah. Because I'm with you. I love how direct you are. That's lame. I love you. I love you. That's awesome. Yeah, and that's the point there, is that I'm with you. I'm with you. All right. You guys all jump in here with me. Let's talk about the best practices for prospecting. Let's go back to your fears about doing it in any context, okay? I'll take anybody in my hot seat that says, yeah, but I just don't feel comfortable, or I'm not the type of person that. If that's on your mind right now, there you go. Leslie, where do you get local market content? Right out of MLS. I'll guarantee you that the Michigan MLS has content that you can just download for market updates, and you don't need anything more than a talking point to have something there that's relevant. But
I found out I've used that.
Yeah, but Leslie, here's what I say is better market content, okay? I'm going to stick with Clara's cut the bull, out of here and go straight to the chase. If I'm picking up the phone and it's Clara, I want the most relevant, hyper-relevant information to the person on that street. Hey, Clara, it's Danny Griffin calling from Griffin Realty Group. The reason I'm calling you is because your neighbor just sold for top dollar. They got 1.2 million in about 3 days. Okay? Inventory is super limited, so I don't know if you knew anybody else that was, thinking about selling, and you don't happen to be selling, do you? Because that's a pretty big number. Boom. That's the fastest path to a real conversation where you will either get, yes, I'm thinking, yes, I know somebody, or no, I'm not. And if I still want to leave a footprint...
I totally agree.
What's that?
I totally agree. That's an excellent group right there.
Yeah. And yours...
They're all watching you because you have a listing. I mean, they've all been just totally studying this house on the listing because it's relevant to them. Yeah, and
you're right. And that's the grand slam if you control the listing or Paul does. How about when you don't? How about all of you listening that don't have a single listing and the last time you sold one in a neighborhood you'd like to do more business was a couple years ago? Go in MLS, do a map search of everything that's sold in the last 3 weeks. Look for one that you think is an interesting story that you can add insight. So now the script goes, hey, Leslie, it's Danny Griffin calling from Griffin Realty Group. I'm calling you because 123 Main Street just sold. And what's interesting about that is it sold above its asking price in very few days. So it has nothing to do with whether or not you controlled the listing. It has everything to do with you're the only one delivering a hyper-local market update to that human being. So and there's no rules or laws against that. Nothing. Because we, in this modern context, are able to give away all this market information that's general or specific. That's up to you, right? See what I'm saying? So I don't want anybody listening to this call to say, yeah, but. I would be more interested in saying the act of creating, I've created this thing called DPPO 20. For years, my clients in this group who are familiar with my help in cutting to the chase, that's the cut to the chase formula. Every day you wake up, you have to think about building your database filled with what? Prospects. Okay? You have to fill your database with prospects. So the next action that you have to do is either fill it with contact info from a cold directory or a lead gen platform. I don't care which for that moment. Get them in your database. The next thing you do is what? Phones, P, pick up and dial. The next thing that comes from that is P, presentation, where you can go online or in their face and present the buyer or seller course. And ultimately, O, get in the field so you can write offers on that open house or showing buyers, etc. That's the cut to the chase real estate agent formula. So if you're not out in the field writing offers, it means you're not giving enough presentations as to why they should use you. If you don't have an opportunity to give enough presentations, that means you didn't make enough phone calls. If you don't have enough phone calls to make, it means you don't have enough contact information for people that you think you can have relationships with around real estate. So a very simple formula. And why did I say 20? Because think about it. If you would all commit yourselves to that act, okay, for 20 hours a week, that's it. 20 hours a week. That's a part-time job. So if you would make real estate a real organized part-time job for 20, exercising those things, and obviously it's built for the rookie or the veteran, okay? Because you can move all the way back to D. Oh, I'm brand new, just got my license. And I know a couple of Gail's team members are on here. Chad and Pamela working on their license. Great. What I tell them the other day on Campfire, yesterday bonus. I said, take some business cards if they allow you in California, and if they don't, start prospecting now. Yeah. Give those prospects to Gail, who can talk real estate specifics with the license, and then she'll work something out with you that as soon as you get it, she co-does it or hands them back to you. So even before you have a license, you can be working on D to hit the ground running. Leslie, does that help the concept of, where we were going a couple weeks ago with you, or last week with you, about seniors? That's the lane you wanted to be in. So now, building the database filled with seniors who are people that you can follow up with on the phone, there you go.
It's just like a matter of finding your niche or your lane or your area you want to focus on, and really just diving into that specific.
And owning that first and becoming that, whatever you're like, you can't, you can get yourself out of the business and say, hang on one sec, Gail. You can get yourself out of the business if you get all worked about any kind. So the thing is to look at the people probates, seniors, move up if you're in one of those markets, whatever is really the phenomenon for movement out of a house, focus on the one that vibes with you and just do this basic work around that. Prospect into that group. And the fastest path is, like I said to her, go to a senior center. Give a presentation. That's a prospect event. Sure, Gail, go ahead.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, Gail.
When we talked with Chad, last night he called me around 8 o'clock. He met this lady that is an HR person for a large company. And so he gave me all of her information, her card, and I'm going to contact and follow up with her. So after you talked to him, he was looking for prospects, and they found one. So it's pretty awesome, I think.
Isn't that, it's incredible when we program, and going back to the beginning of the call with Laura, and so, I know a lot of people, my friends on Facebook are in sales businesses, and they like these calls, because it's all the same to this extent. If you all don't individually define your North Star,
yes,
you got to define your North Star, right? Where's your true north? Where are you pointing towards? Where are you going? And so if it is seniors and they're your way to prospects, or in Chad's case, if he works at the bar or the restaurant, that's where he's prospecting, because it's just not hard to have a real estate conversation, right, Gail?
Yep. So, Danny, we have Cecile on the phone. She has her license. She just started this week with Rossetti Realty.
Awesome.
And we want to say a shout out to her. And she's on the phone. Maybe we could, say hi to her.
Cecile, don't you love being called out by name, huh?
Hi there.
How are you? Welcome. Welcome. You're in great hands with the First Lady of Palo Alto, Atherton, and everything around it, real estate, with Gail. So welcome to the family.
I really believe that. I really do.
Yeah. Well, she's a winner. She's got us all convinced in this group. We're all quietly scared of Gail, just so you know. In our mastermind group, there's a lot of dudes in there. They're just quietly scared of Gail, right? So congrats. Hey, Cecilia, as somebody who's just licensed, let me slow down what I just said, okay? If there's a cut to the chase, because Gail has a fabulous training program that I don't think exists anywhere for agents in your area, and I'm not patronizing because I don't do that. The fact that she takes you into the head stuff is exactly what a veteran sitting next to me after 12, 13 years of doing this is saying the same thing. So Gail's teaching you the importance of that early and often, then getting into the courses. However, there's the practical that Chad was able to say and join on the other day, which was, Chad, do you want to start to make money now or be in a position to do so now? Then what you need to do is go back to your context where you live in the area and think, my North Star is to fill my database at Rossetti Realty, and I have this pro that can help me do it. So I'm going to sit in that bar, in that restaurant, and I'm going to prospect. And boom, in 24 hours, he has one. So that is the act first of building database.
And write down a list of your sphere of influence and people, like your Christmas card list.
Right.
Start spreading the word that you're in the business now, because I made that mistake. I'm in it 12 years, and I just started to do that this year.
Yeah.
That's sad.
So think about that.
So don't make my mistake.
Well, because nobody ever teaches it, right? Yeah. It's like, go write a letter to everybody. But for what purpose? Yeah. Like, there's so many great ideas in this industry, but they're never tied together for the purpose of creating a database. Look, I can make this argument, okay? That a lot of you shouldn't be putting leads into your database unless you really have, like the mastermind members, a sophisticated conversion system like we built in Infusionsoft for our business and share with the masterminders, right? You should really be thinking more so about database as a concept for prospects. And a prospect is a contact who is engaging in a real estate conversation with you around buying or selling either soon or later, right? Sooner or later, that's what they're doing. So I think what you have to do is you have to pay attention to that and say, all right, so my North Star, which Chad really understood immediately and took action, he brings back and harvests his very first prospect. So somebody that he didn't know or knew lightly as a regular, whatever, just became an actual real estate contact, prospect in his database. That's a huge milestone. Huge. It's huge, because if he will now continue to be proper in the delivery of good information and then be insightful on top of it. I'm going to keep saying that each week here. It's one thing to deliver information that's relevant to them, but if you want to morph this relationship into client status someday, you must also be insightful. You must be bringing them insight. See, it's why does the world need teachers in schools and colleges? The textbook is there. Why don't you just read it and get everything? Because you're lacking the insight of the teacher. You're lacking the insight of the professional. And that's why we are going to exist for a very long time. Just because information can be delivered, insight must happen. So to trip them into the database first, some insight makes them feel comfortable that it is okay to give you their information. It is okay to be engaged in this relationship. And now they come in. You're laughing. Why?
Well, I was just thinking about what Danny said at our listing presentation about how fabulous my emails are. The educational seller emails. And you were like, yes, she's brilliant.
Do you hear that? So then that's where that P. So now that they're in their prospect database, this guy, Dan, she's talking about, Dan's in the database. He's a seller. I went out there a long time ago.
We've been talking to him for probably a good 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years. In the middle of the recession, where his neighborhood was topsy-turvy, drug dealer over here, dilapidated house, gone, all upgraded. We come there, beautiful sunny day, looking good 3 weeks out from listing. And his comments is, your emails are fabulous. She's really good. He's telling me, and I'm like, she's excellent, right? And these are automated emails, but they were developed to be personalized and delivered because they're insightful. That's what they are. So they're allowing somebody to prepare, and that's what the P is. Phones, texts, and emails. That's what we added to the DPPO, because in that category, you have to continuously deliver information, and it has to be insightful. So now we go from a prospect to phones, where we're following up, and that's okay now to add emails and text as you're following up. So that ultimately, what did we do the other day? What came third? What did we do?
Our presentation.
We went back out and presented again. Been there, presented one, but went back out and presented again. It was a lighter presentation around what we do because we're so educated. By the way, it's a competition-less situation.
Yeah.
This is not a cattle call.
It's always been just us.
Correct. So that's the best advice that we can give you. And I think priced right that, open houses quickly in about 3 weeks or so. We'll probably have this under agreement pretty quickly.
I think so.
Cecilia? Was it Cecilia? Did I get that right? Name?
I think so.
Yeah?
I'm here.
Yeah. Questions about what we just walked through, because we tried to be very pragmatic for you being new. That's the exact cut to the chase stuff that we do.
Yes, no, that was really interesting, actually, this conversation today, because like Gail said, I just started this week, so I'm going to have to go through that, and this is already very helpful to know that you guys went through that and you know what works and what does not. So just the timing for the phone calling and all that, that's very interesting to me. And, how to approach someone also. And the approach that I was thinking as well was more trying to talk to people directly. Like, I don't know if I'm ready for the cold calling yet. And I think, when you talk directly to someone, meeting them through events, meeting them through whatever it could be, I think it would be more helpful for me to start at the beginning until getting more comfortable.
I have no argument with that, because I think when somebody rushes, it's sort of like in anything when somebody's an amateur status at something. They're an amateur golfer, ballerina, hockey player, it doesn't matter. You're an amateur at something. You practice in I don't want to call it the amateur leagues, because all those venues are not. You're a professional now. You have a license and you're ready to go. But I do believe that there's nothing wrong with that area of influence that you already have. That's the way I would say this more so. And that's also undertaught in this business. We throw the term sphere of influence around, but nobody explains what that means. It means exactly what it says you just said. if there are events and things that you already do, we live in the world, Cecilia, right? So we live in this context. If you already are part of a group, if you're already part of yoga, if you're already part of, and I'm being very basic, that is where real estate can pop up.
Kids hockey
games.
I mean, you've gotten probably business from that.
Oh my gosh, tons of business from my kids. I have too many kids. So, kids events have been big events for me. But I always said this too, is that I would go out to restaurants on a regular basis with a stack of cards. And I tend to be much more aggressive than most people, but I'm also a weird introvert too. So until and unless I heard a conversation around real estate, but then once that went on, my North Star lit up in the sky, right? But that's what I mean.
Yeah.
My North Star would light up and I would I'm out at a restaurant and that beacon just lit up. There is somebody who needs insight on real estate. Hey, my name is Danny Griffin. I overheard you talking and, I'm a local realtor here. You're absolutely right that this is this and that is that. Here's my card if I can ever do something. Were you thinking about doing something soon? Yeah, we're working with a realtor. Awesome. Who is it? Oh, what a nice person they are. You're in good hands. Mm-hmm. And just boom, you're out of there, because if you do that enough times, there are more than enough people to bring back to your database like Chad did, put in there and begin continuous. That's the key word. Continuous delivery of the next level of information. So let's go back to the case where we're talking about Clara. The most general information you could call around is what's happening generally, and I'll use my Beacon Hill example, what's generally happening that month in the real estate market. The next most hyper level that you could do is just listed. The next best one is just sold because it actually went down, right? So you're seeing the depth of where we go, but it's getting more and more and more relevant. And then all along the way, though, you could have added insight. Now, all that delivery gets them into your database. Now you can start to introduce in more depth your insight around the home seller course, because what you're doing is the presentation is actually coinciding these days a little bit more with the phone call follow-up. So the DPP presentations don't have to be that someday you get in the house anymore. Now we're either dripping on it, we're putting the full-blown magazine in the mail and mailing it to them. All of that is happening, right? So, and that's leading to this whole development of a deeper relationship, which I will say this again, is creating a vacuum where there is no competition because nobody else is doing that. Nobody else is committed to that relationship. And eventually, if people stay steady with that, they have a steady flow. Mm-hmm. Is that fair? Did I leave anything undone there?
No, undoubtedly. That's how we do it.
That's how we do it, right?
This is how we do it.
Yeah. Uh-oh, she's going to sing. On that note, Q&A. I got a few more minutes for Q&A here. Thoughts? What did I leave undone that's bugging you? Or do you have an anecdote for me you need help with?
Hey, Danny.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, just Laura mentioned something a bit ago about how people were screening out, or screening out their calls, right? Just ignoring it, right? So as far as provoking a response, what do you guys find best? Text, voicemail, to get past that.
All right, Chris, you're really breaking up. If you could take me off Bluetooth, that would be awesome, because I think you have a good call. GVD, I undid your mic, usually because you like to weigh in at the end, but you're in a little bit of a noisy spot too. So if you have something also you want to weigh in on, both of you. So you're just in a noisy spot.
You got it. I'll pull over. I can jump in at any time.
Yeah, cool. Well, I want to see your thoughts here in a second. So, Chris, can you get me in a better, so we can hear the question better?
What? I'm sorry. Repeat it.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Better.
We can't hear you.
Yeah, I've got an echo, and I don't know why I don't have you on Bluetooth, but
much better now.
But what I was asking is with everybody screening their calls these days, and that being prevalent, and to provoke a response, if they're going to send you straight to voicemail, what you find is best practice? Voicemail being left or text being sent?
Well, I think you're asking an open. Yeah, I need context so that I can have Laura's insight and mine. Give us context. I'm guessing you're referring.
It's hard to understand him.
Yeah, I know. I'll repeat it. I'll repeat it, Gail. Gail, I'll repeat it. What he's saying or asking is when we mention voicemails and the maddening part that when we call people, they don't answer, when Aida was in the hot seat, Chris is now following up asking, is there a voicemail that's provocative enough that triggers somebody to respond? And does that come in different mediums, such as a voicemail message we leave for them, a text, or some other medium that we would go in? What I've asked for is for him to give us context, because you can't really answer it unless you know you're calling an expired, you're calling an internet less branded lead versus branded. So I need some context so that Laura and I can, I hope, more thoroughly answer it. So Chris, I need context.
Gotcha. Essentially, either a less branded internet lead or an expired we're calling around, basically someone we've not entered in a dialogue with before, that does not recognize that number coming across with caller ID.
All right, I'll let her answer first, and then I have a pretty strong feeling about what I would do if I were doing it.
Okay. So for specifically expireds, I do leave a voicemail. And it's basically my intro that I would say to them if I got them. And then leave it at that. Can I say that I've had grand success of people calling me back with it? No, not at all. But I feel in my case, it's better to do that and kind of lead the seed than to try calling them for months and getting nowhere and not having them hear my voice in the context of me. So that's my take on it. On a buyer lead, I don't really leave voicemails per se very often, unless there's some history. They're in the prospect, lane where I would have more context, and it would be more relevant. I'm just a very strong believer that I don't think anyone would return a voicemail unless it was very relevant and they really wanted to speak with you.
Yeah. All right. So here's where I'll come from this. Number one, I'm thinking of a couple of things. What she's saying, and Lee Stillwell, who is probably in our group along with Alan, but definitely Lee. Lee is using voicemails the most effectively because he's using Stratix Network to pursue probates. And when he and I masterminded on his one-on-one way back about that, I thought that Robin leaving the message in her voice and doing essentially what Laura said, which was leaving essentially the script of what she would say if she got them, but she was able to record it in a very soft voice. That's why context to me matters. If somebody has passed and there is real estate, you need to sound the right way. You need to be, I said this earlier in the call, you need to be proper for the context, right? So, I mean, the guy at the funeral home is not jumping up and down high-fiving you when you come to the door and going, hey, somebody died, I can take care of this, great, right? So I think, and I'm being a wise guy to exaggerate my point, context really matters.
Yeah.
Because all these calls are not the same. You need to be rooted to the content and the insight. I just said this, information and insight. So if I'm calling up a probate, I'm following what Robin, Lee, and I talked about. You really need to have a soft voice saying, hi, my name is Danny Griffin. I am, a local realtor. And as a free service, I noticed that there's a probate situation that you're in charge of. I know that can be a harrowing time for you. So what we did was we sent out some information that will guide you through that process. I'd love the opportunity to just explain it to you to make your life a little bit easier. Something like that. I'm not saying that's it, but I'm trying to give you tonality and thought about what I'm giving them, because I keep going back. I'm him because of this. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to be as hyper local, relevant, all that stuff. I'm trying to speak specifically to their context so they know I'm paying attention. Okay? And I have to be willing to be detached from that outcome. Now, let's go back to my other gut reaction, which is the other side, which is the not so soft side of me, right? Which is you've got to put it on them at some point in time. I don't believe early on that voicemail is there, but even if it were, hey, this is Danny Griffin calling from the Griffin Realty Group. The reason I'm calling is I saw that you're in charge of a probate estate. And I know that can be a very difficult time. So what I did was I sent you one of my best strategies to walk you through it. Now, of course, the best thing is I take a few minutes to explain it to you in the case that there is real estate to sell, so life is a little bit easier. So would you do me a favor? Would you text me or call me back or email me? Either of these ways, whatever it is that's easy for you, so that I know you either do or do not have a piece of property that you need my guidance for. I'd appreciate it. Otherwise, I'll just call you back. So even in the toughest of situations, I can get to the end and say, I gave you this thing. It needs some explanation. I want the opportunity to do that, but I don't even know if I'm right. I don't know if you have real estate to sell. But either way, will you let me know so I don't bother you? Because if you don't, I'm going to keep bothering you. Now, that was implied. It wasn't explicitly stated. So see, Chris, how that context matters? Now, if I go to expireds, I have to be relevant in what I know to be the truth. Hey, it's Danny Griffin calling from the Griffin Realty Group. I'm calling because I saw that you came off the MLS. I'm sure you're getting a whole bunch of calls with promises that somebody could solve the situation. What I did was something completely different. I just actually sent you the layout of my plan and how we do what we do. If you're thinking about relisting, I ask that you just take a heartbeat and consider that plan. And of course, I know it'll require me to go through it with you. So do me a favor. Would you send me a text, email, whatever it is that's appropriate to let me know whether you will or will not be relisting? Because I believe a second opinion matters. Otherwise, I'll try you back later in the week. So I'm going to put it on you to respond to me. Otherwise, I'm going to keep coming, and I'm going to let you know that. Right? Because my North Star says I need to determine whether you are indeed somebody who will allow me to turn you into a prospect in my database or not. I need to cut to the chase. You can have my insightful information, my what to do, for free. It's already done. It's on its way. You can have it. Voila. But I need to know in return, are you going to give me a chance or not? Yeah. Right? Or is there any chance or not? Do you have real estate to sell in a probate, or are you going to relist anytime soon? Is there any chance? And if so, I want a shot. So that is putting it on them, Chris, but I can level up the tonality and level it down, right? Lastly, going into lead gen, which I still know you have a lot of those. You have too many of them. So you should think about what Lee was suggesting to Cantu this week. You should think about a voicemail drop. So there's a venue for you. And you should think about a stealth one that gets through to everybody. Hey, it's Chris Egan calling. The reason I'm calling is you came into my database a while back and you've been receiving updates. I want to make sure that it's still relevant in your situation. So before I delete your account, would you let me know either way? So you can really put it on people that you're looking for finality and bring them to that determination, Chris. Does that help? Chris? Yeah, you got
a question if I can ask real quick.
Yeah, sure, John. Chris, you got a tough mic. I'll assume that you're an expert by now. Go ahead, John. Fire.
No, I got it. Good though.
Okay, fire, John.
I understand what Laura is saying as far as seeing calls come in and sending them to voicemail. Have we talked about maybe sending a video link so that we're sending them a video that they can watch on phone?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question, and I think what's relevant about it, it's just a different medium. So let's presume in the question that we have fully formed, let's just for the sake of theoretical argument here today, let's say we have a fully formed expired lead, that Vulcan gives us everything. We've got email, phone number, and address, okay?
Danny, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. Sure. John is asking if it's appropriate. Yeah, if John's asking if it's appropriate to also, not appropriate, if it makes sense to send a video link too, because John's working on video. Yes. But what I would say is the video itself shouldn't just jump to generic like home seller course videos. What it should do is be a physical video manifestation of you saying what you would say if they answered the phone. So whether it's an email, a text, a video response, it should be, hey, it's Danny Griffin. We saw that your house came off the market, and so we're just checking in to let you know we sent you our best stuff. It's a layout of how we do what we do.
I love that idea.
right? Check out Griffin Realty, GriffinFeaturedProperties.com to see part of what we do, but the 7 steps you're getting it. So, John, I would say if the video says what you would say on the telemarketing voicemail, the Stratix Network voicemail drop, the postcard, if it's consistent as the proper introduction, yes. Absolutely yes.
I like that.
Yep.
So, and I don't know if this call is the appropriate forum, but can we talk about scripting for video that we would do, the video voicemail?
Yeah. Let's do it on the helpline this week. And then we'll share it with everybody else who doesn't come on the mastermind calls because they don't have access. I will work on it with the helpline with you and our one-on-one, and we'll talk about it. Because the quick and dirty answer is that it would follow the scripting that we've laid out already. So the masterminding stuff, that we did the other day about those scripts for expireds, probates, and we have yet to do a prospecting one around circle prospecting, but it's pretty much going to follow the same thing. That would be it, John, because these videos that you're suggesting are short and sweet. You can get away with a little bit more. Hey, if you'd like to take the next step now before we contact you, before we make personal contact, you can download our free home seller course here. So there could be a call to action. So it would be the script and then a call to action. So I'll work on that with you next week. Hey, GVD, did you have something you wanted to add there, buddy? I had you on the side of the road. Sorry, I hope you're not...
I did.
Yeah, go, bud.
No, that's okay. I did. I don't know if this is a question or just
go, it's all right.
Reminder for us. We lost a buyer today that we put in a rental 2 years ago.
Yep.
And we followed up with them according to schedule, quarterly, and then we moved it monthly and biweekly. And they bought from somebody else. And I guess it's a reminder, I guess, about the insight of prospecting, offering the educational emails and conversation emails. But also, I got to thinking, I got to go deeper and thinking, offer a little bit more, or offer to show them properties more often. I don't know how we lost somebody like that we stayed in touch with.
Well, it's actually Clara and I talked about that a lot over the last 2 or 3 weeks ourselves in her calls. It's a regular occurrence for us. Just because we follow up per se to schedule, the question is, are we adding enough insight, but more appropriately, are we reestablishing their timing, right? Just because they've done something with you, we have to go back and reprospect our past clients, which is where we're trying to move Laura's job description into. I want her going to past clients and getting into with them, reestablishing timing. Will they be making a move? Are they thinking about making a move? Right? Then into clients and prospects and leads. You got to not forget, past clients need the same hyper level of attention and prospecting activities. They're not just going to get emails and market updates. They're going to need conversations to see if they can be reprospected right back to the start. So I think you just have to go back and check that, because you become very vulnerable to the in-moment impulse. Hey, I'm sick and tired of renting. Let's go out and look at some open houses, right? And in that heat of that moment, the guy says, yeah, oh my gosh, I love this place. Can we make an offer? It's not even that you didn't do something better than you could. It's that impulse of that person to go out and take action. It's not like they cheated on you, right? It's not like they cheated on you, but you never put it on them and said, look, remember, if you're ever going to go out and buy again, remember what I did with somebody gave me on the helpline a market update newsletter. And the first thing I noticed is they had stripped out all the calls to action at the bottom. Are you thinking about buying? Go here. Are you thinking about selling? Go here. Are you thinking about referring me? Go here. And to John Parasek's point, that's where I want 3 emails. Hey, thanks for coming here. Looks like you're thinking about buying. And I'm going to tell them how to behave, right? Because they don't know how to behave. Geez, I didn't know, Grant. I didn't know. I went out and we were there. My gosh, I feel terrible, but I got to take care of my family, so I bought it. It's nothing personal, and oftentimes it's not systematic. So you can plug the holes and say, geez, Danny, we're not the problem. We followed up frequently enough to be there. But yes, Grant, you didn't recondition them to know.
Derek.
You got it. It just happened to us, okay? How about that? So there you go. What else? Good?
Got it.
You got it. All right, guys, listen, we're over time. Appreciate you all. Good work here today. Really good call today. That's why we went bonus time, because we're digging in deep. We're getting participation from people that matter. So kudos to all of you that participate on these calls. We appreciate you. Go use this stuff. Ask Chad. It really works, right? See you next week. Good work.